evening. We'll call the meeting to order. It's Tuesday, May 13th of 2025. This is the Stoughton City Council, and the first order of business would be the roll call. Clerk Kristen.
Okay, Nino.
Here.
Caravello.
Here.
Bosniak Scanlon.
Here.
Lucky.
Here.
Hirsch.
Here.
Johnson. Tillison.
Present.
Reeves.
Here.
Butler.
Here.
Schumacher.
Here.
Okay, we have 10 alders present, and Alder Abel is absent and excused.
All right, thank you. We were properly noticed, so we are in compliance with open meeting laws. Nobody is signed up for public comment, and we had a request to go right to the consent agenda. There's a number of items in there, the consent agenda, including we have a candidate that applied for the vacant seat in District 1. Mike, thanks for being here. And then how would you like us to handle that, Candy? Did you do some preliminary work?
So, excuse me, Mike completed the application, and if you have any questions for him, you can feel free to ask them now. And if you make that decision to put him in the seat, then I will swear him in, and we're ready to go.
All right. So the questionnaire that Mike completed is in the packet. We have it in the consent agenda. We can certainly have them go through, and you can answer the questions, or you can just read what's in the packet. How would you guys like to proceed?
I think maybe just have Mike come up and do a little intro statement, you know, who he is and what he's interested with council and other creative things he wants to add in.
All right, I'm Mike Viano. I apologize in advance. I'm a bit nervous. When I get nervous, I talk faster, and I'm originally from Boston, so I may add or drop R's randomly, so I apologize in advance. I've been living in Stoughton since 2020, and so, 2000. Raised 3 kids here. 2 of them are twins. They're going to be graduating this year. We really, we love this community. I was on the library board for 9 years. I was a scout leader in various positions for 15 years. I like to give back to the community, and this is just another way of doing that. My profession, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I work for the state at Mendota Mental Health Institution. We also just recently opened up a new clinic here. I'm a co-owner for that, for Valley Mental Health, and so another way for me to get back to the community.
Excellent. Thank you. Any questions for Mike or any comments? Alderperson Reeves.
Actually, thank you for being interested. My question is actually for, I don't know if it's for Attorney Manthe or Clerk Christian, but what is the term on this? If you could remind us, maybe it's in the packet. I didn't see it.
I believe it's for April of 26.
26, okay. Thank you.
That is correct.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go through. Oh, you can't see me. I can't. AI figured that out for us.
I know, you put that block in, you never see me again. Thank you. No, I just want to thank you for applying, and it's, it is, as we are all here, it's a big commitment, but it's very rewarding. And I guess my only question is there anything that you're looking to enjoy on City Council, or anything that inspires you to work on?
The power. No, I'm just joking. Just being able to get back. I enjoyed my time on the library board. Just get to see how the city works, like behind the scenes and that. And I appreciate that. And and I recognize that there's no social worker on the board right now. I know there's been one for quite a while with Sid and Jean, and now I can be the next one. So just bring my perspective to the board, and just give my input when I can. And if it leads anywhere, great. If not, it's great too. Just having the opportunity.
All right, Alderperson Jensen.
Are you saying we need help?
How much time do we have now? I don't know.
All right,
You all
anybody
put
else?
me in charge, that should give you an indication.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so this is part of the consent agenda, so I would entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve.
That was Butler, is there a second? Second by Jensen. Would anybody like anything from the consent agenda acted on separately? No, we're good. All right, so the consent agenda, what we do is we lump a bunch of things together for efficiencies. All in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. So Candy, are you prepared to swear in, do the oath?
I sure am.
Okay. So
I
you
got
can-
one question for Rick,
Okay.
quick. Rick, with the way that they changed well, I guess this isn't like open, closed session. Are these ones that we have to do a voice vote on for an appointment, or?
No, the biggest restriction was we couldn't do like a ballot.
Got it.
And so this is perfectly fine.
Okay, so hopefully I can, let's see. I'll pin the clerk so you can see the clerk on TV, and then she'll administer the oath. And then once she's done with that, you'll be seated right over here, and then we'll be ready to roll with the meeting. Are you good? Okay, so the floor is yours, Candy.
Okay, could you please raise your right hand and repeat after me? I state your name,
I, Mike Viano,
having been elected to the office of District 1 Alderperson,
having been elected to District 1 Alderperson,
affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially discharge
and faithfully and impartially discharge
the duties of said office to the best of my ability.
the duties of said office to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. All right, thank you, Candy. And then he has to sign his life away, right?
Yes.
Okay. Don't forget about that part. I don't know if you've made arrangements to do that. Yeah, so we'll get you together with Candy, and then HR will have some stuff, and then they'll have some, a notebook for you as well. So we'll get you set up here shortly. And then you can just kind of follow along tonight. If you have any questions, feel free to ask or nudge the person next to you. They'll help you. Okay, next item on the agenda is the communications and presentations. So this is what we look forward to most in the meeting is,
Really?
yeah, it is, sadly. President Schumacher with the historical fact of Stoughton.
All right, instead of my rapid fire ones that I've done in the past, I've got a couple of longer written out ones here. So May 1908, so this is sort of a parable in here. So I'm assuming that this was in the newspaper at some point in time. So it says, when it cost nearly $8,000 to make a fairly decent campaign for justice of the Supreme Court, what becomes of our boasted opportunities for achieving the highest honor ever created by man without money and price? There are no such opportunities. Offices paying a mere pittance cost those who seek them nearly double what they amount to. We create honorable places, and when a man in ordinary circumstances tries to get one of them, he has not the price, and it goes to the man who has, whether or not he's qualified for it or not. There ought to be some means devised to prevent the lavish use of money in campaigns. 1908. It is injuring our country, depriving it of services and its most capable men. And then by contrast, the 2025 Supreme Court election spent $100+ million versus the $8,000. then. I don't know what that would be adjusted for inflation, but. Right, but that 8,000 would probably maybe only be about, I'd say, maybe about 80,000. But even so, anyway, 1908. Now, 1948, these are all in May occurrences. Electric energy generated by the 3 Stoughton hydro plants not only exceeded purchased energy in April, but hit another all-time high. The constant flow of water in the Yahara was one reason. Another is the equipment installed in 1947 and continuous 24-hour operation of all 3 plants and nearly maximum efficiency as possible. This included the Stebbinsville hydro plant, which now, like the others, is remotely controlled from the city plant at North 4th Street. In that same year, representatives of Southern Wisconsin Anti-Pollution Federation served notice that last night that they planned to carry their battle to clean up the Madison area lakes to the legislatures and the courts. So, 1948, still in progress. So then in 1973, Stoughton's high school expansion will include a swimming pool, and that's the mandate of the electorate on the Tuesday's referendum. Residents in the district voted in a rather high percentage, with 63.6% voting yes. There were 1,865 votes cast, and the affirmative of 1,187 and 678 negative. That's all.
All right, thank you. Next presentation would be from City Attorney Matthew, and this is on open meeting laws.
Yeah, so all the veterans on the council have heard this a lot, but it's always good for a brush up on open meetings law and various ethical issues and public records law. So I guess I'll first start with the open meetings law. So Wisconsin has sunshine laws, right? So any governmental body that meets, it has to provide notice to the public at least 24 hours in advance, and the notice has to be specific enough that people know what will be discussed or decided by that governmental body. So a body would be the city council, any committee, any group or organization that's created by order of the city council, or any rule. So it's fairly broad. Any sort of like subunit of the government where you're appointing members to it would qualify as a governmental body that the open meetings law would apply to. So definition of a meeting is where things can sometimes get a little tricky. So as the courts have interpreted, basically, if there's more than a majority of the body there, that is a meeting of that governmental body. So here, even though your quorum is 8 by council rules, if there were to be 7 members of you together in one area, there'd be a meeting presumed for the open meetings purposes. That's presumed, so it could be rebutted. So there are some situations where that would not apply. But the other issue is if you're meeting together to talk about governmental business or something that your body has jurisdiction over. So here, as a city council, if there are a lot of you in one room together, a lot of things fall under the umbrella of the city. If it's committees, so if it's like, the Parks Committee, if there's a majority of the Parks Committee somewhere and they're talking about parks issues, that would be a meeting where the open meetings law would apply. The other thing to consider is what's called, as part of the numbers test, is sometimes a meeting can take place even if there's not a majority of people there. If there are a number of members there that can affect the outcome of a decision, then that would be a quorum, or a meeting. So I guess one example would be like a budget decision or a budget amendment. By state statute, a budget amendment requires a 2/3 vote. So if you have enough members present that are discussing the budget amendment to where they would be able to defeat that, so if you've got, I guess it would be 5 members, then that would be a meeting even though you don't have a majority there. I guess arguably you could say that a meeting could occur even with 4 members or 5 members on anything, because that affects a quorum. So if you've got 5 members who are just gonna all decide they're not going to a meeting, theoretically that could be a numbers issue where you're affecting the outcome of a decision. So a couple of things to keep in mind as well. The walking quorum, so that is when there's sort of a series of meetings. So for instance, if you've got one alderperson who then calls 6 other alder members about a particular topic, but you're never like on the same phone call together, you're never in the same meeting place together, that would still be a meeting for purposes of the open meetings law. So you can't try to get a consensus ahead of time. You can talk to other alder members about where they're at on certain things or lobby them on certain things, but just be careful about who you're talking to so you're not talking to more than a majority or a number that would be able to determine the outcome of an action. So informal meeting or like impromptu or social gatherings, those are generally okay under the open meetings law as long as you're not discussing government business. So for instance, like Centimai, if all of you are there this weekend and you just happen to be on the same block together, you don't have to worry about the open meetings law. Like that's a social gathering, just don't talk about city business. Sometimes what we'll do is if we know that there's going to be a majority of the council at like a committee meeting or something like that, or like a community organization meeting, we'll post a notice just saying that a possible quorum will be there, but no action will be taken or discussed. Like let's say that there's a chamber event and we think that there's going to be a quorum there, we'll just post a notice. So we'll sort of keep an eye out on things that might be popular for council members. Email is another thing to be careful about. So if I were to send a communication to all the council members, what I'll do is BCC. That way nobody can reply all. It's supposed to just be a one-way communication for information purposes. So there should be no reply alls going back and forth because you're all getting information at the same time. It's not open to the public, so that would be a violation of the open meetings law. So I would strongly discourage sending emails to all council members. If it's just for informational purposes, just do it BCC for the council. That way there's no reply all function. Social media is also just another thing to be wary of, like commenting on posts and things like that. If you get a majority of people commenting on the same post, theoretically it could be a meeting. So just be careful about that. What makes the open meetings law somewhat difficult is it was written before email and all social media. So we're dealing with a law that is in modern times. So it just makes things more complicated. So adequate notice, we just need to provide 24 hours notice generally. Some items require more advanced notice if there's a public hearing. So like rezoning requests, we have to provide a notice 2 weeks in advance that's published. Closed session items, we are able to go into closed session. We frequently will go into that for like negotiation purposes for agreements like tax increment financing agreements, development agreements, things like that. So we can close those meetings to the public. So for negotiation purposes, if there's a potential lawsuit that I need to talk to you guys about to get direction on, labor and employment decisions, those things can all be in closed sessions. We can do an impromptu closed session if the exemption applies, but the open meetings law prohibits us from going back into open session for at least 12 hours if we don't specifically notice we're going back into open session. So we rarely, I don't think we've ever done that. It's always noticed properly so we can come back into open session. Closed session action items. If we're making a final decision, that will typically be an open session. But if we're getting sort of like a negotiation position, then that would not be an open session because we're trying to preserve our bargaining position on getting direction. So generally, final decisions will be an open session, but we can sort of get a consensus in closed session. And one thing I'll just mention about closed session as well, I don't believe there's like an ordinance requirement to this effect, but basically closed sessions, anything that happens in those should be kept confidential. because we don't want to, even if you disagree with the direction that the city goes, we don't want to undermine the city's position in any negotiation. So that's more or less just a fiduciary duty you have to the city as being a member of the council in the closed session. Any questions about open meetings before I go on to the next couple of items? All right. Ethics, I guess the big takeaway here is don't accept any money for doing certain action. You're not allowed to use your office for you're not allowed to use your office for personal gain or get anything of a substantial benefit, financial gain. So it could be money, it could be if your business is applying for a permit, you should not be participating in that because that permit has value to you. And the same thing applies to your immediate family members, which would be a spouse or somebody related to you by blood or marriage and receives 50% of their support from you. So it doesn't apply to all family members, so it's actually more narrower than people think, but oftentimes people will just recuse themselves just because of the public perception. A few big ones to be aware of, because they're felonies. So you can't, as a public official, participate in the making of a contract in your official capacity if you have a direct or indirect financial interest in that contract. And this one is more broad in its application, but you can't enter into any agreement with the city for which you, that exceeds $15,000. That's a benefit to you. So that one is a felony. Even if you recuse yourself and you abstain, it doesn't matter. Your position as an official where you're contracting with the city for $15,000 or more in 1 year is a felony. So you're not allowed to do business with the city as a private business person. If you ever have questions about an ethics issue, there is a city ethics board. You can ask for an advisory opinion or just ask my office. We can look into it. We keep those confidential. And if you rely on an advisory opinion, there's a presumption that you've tried to comply with the ethical, the state ethics code. I guess one other thing I'll mention is, because like generally with legislative decisions, like if somebody's coming to you for a rezoning request, the person doesn't have a right to an impartial decision maker, which sounds odd, but your legislative decisions, those are strictly like you have the most amount of discretion for those. It's different if somebody is coming to you asking for a permit. So that's, you're serving as a quasi-judicial body where you're taking in evidence and applying the evidence to facts to decide whether or not they are qualified for a permit. So in those cases, the law does require, if you're acting in as a quasi-judicial body, the law does require you to be impartial in your decision making. So if there's actual bias or an impermissibly high risk of bias, the courts have said that you're not allowed to participate in those decisions. So that would be something like a conditional use permit, an alcohol licensing permit, something like that, where we've got standards set by statute or ordinance, and we're applying facts that the applicant is submitting to those standards. Parliamentary procedure. So the council has its own rules governing procedure. I think generally the council does a good job of maintaining decorum and respectfulness here. Technically speaking, everybody needs to be waited to be called on by the mayor or the chair of the committee, but I think things run pretty smoothly here. Motions, that's how decisions are made, usually by a majority vote. Some actions require a 2/3 vote, but generally we've got a main motion, which would be the motion to approve, typically, and then you get a second, followed by discussion. You can do what are called secondary motions, which would be something like a motion to amend or a motion to table or postpone. So that would then take precedence over the main motion. I'll be there to explain it if we ever run into this. So that's just sort of a brief overview of it. Public records law, I guess, just be aware that everything you write is subject to the public records law. So just treat everything that every emails, even text messages could theoretically be a record, even if it's on your personal phone, if it's relating to city business. So if you're texting another alder about something involving the city, theoretically could fall under the public records law. So I guess main thing is, if you're going to do written correspondence, keep it to your city email address. Don't use your personal email address for city business, just because it's harder to get public records. And people generally don't want to hand over all of their emails from their private email address. So that would just be the big takeaway there, is just please use your city email address for all city correspondence. Yes.
And that would include social media, right? Like, you don't want to be commenting as yourself if people are discussing a policy or something going on in the
Yes, that could theoretically fall under the public records law, and that means you would not be able to delete that comment, and we have to preserve it for 7 years. All right, any other questions? Fun stuff, I know.
That's it? Wasn't too painful.
No.
All right. Are there any communications from council members while I load up the next item here? No communications, okay. All right. Let me see. Candy, is this advancing?
Hold on, it is.
Okay, great. Okay, so every year I do kind of a population update, and these slides are more for a resource for you. So if you have questions or you need to know what's going on, it's kind of all in one place. So I'm going to go through them rather quickly, but certainly if you have any questions, feel free to ask. So this is for the year ending 2024. So I start out usually with the county, and you can see that the county continues to grow at really record rates. The last projection they did that went through 2030, by the time we got to 2020, they'd already reached what they had projected to do in 2030, and we don't see any reason that that won't continue. So we work with our county executive and our county supervisor to try to put things in places, infrastructure especially, in order to accommodate the growth. We're going to talk a lot about housing as we go through this. The first one shows slides going back to 2000, and these are only for single-family homes and duplexes, so it doesn't include condos or multifamily. But you can see back in the early 2000s, we were basically building about 2,000 units a year. That's how many building permits were being pulled. And then you can see the lean years kind of during the recession era. And then the last several years were right around slightly over 1,000, about 1,100. So almost half of what we were building back in the early 2000s on single-family homes. But as you know, our population has continued to grow during that period. So that's one of the things that's really resulted in the housing shortage here in Dane County. We're just not building as many single-family homes as we were back then. I don't have any data for multifamily, but I'm guessing the multifamily is probably going the other direction. We seem to be doing more of that in Dane County the last several years. But focusing mostly on single-family homes on this slide here. This one here breaks it down, basically building permits by month over the last several years. So you can kind of see the patterns. It's fairly consistent since 2016 in the counties on the monthly totals. And then when you look at Stoughton down below, you'll see that in Stoughton in 2025, we've already pulled 23 permits compared to 14 at this time last year. We expect that number will continue to rise with all the developments that we have going on. So one of the things I've talked about in the past is that Dane County did a 12-month housing strategic planning process. So we're in the process of putting the implementation in place. So I'm on two committees. Plan Director Chris Munns-Pritchard is on one of them with me. I've been asked to speak at one of them in order to give an update of what's going on in Stoughton. They're focusing on all sorts of housing, but especially entry-level homes, which is going to be a big part of their strategy. And you can kind of see the priorities for Dane County are outlined here on this slide. And then in Stoughton, as you know, we're in the process of just beginning our public participation component of our comprehensive plan, which we have to do every 10 years by state law. We're actually doing our comp plan a couple years early because the plan that we had really feels like it's outdated, even though it's only 8 years old, and it's been a real big change in the market. And we've been in the process of updating some of the ordinance along the way, but more than likely, depending on the results of the comprehensive plan, there might be some more ordinances that we'll look at. So hopefully everybody received an email with a link to do that. If you haven't, let me know. I'll make sure we get that sent out. I received an email today that they also have the survey component, and I think it was like 5 different languages, so they just released that today, so we can hopefully get a broad representation of our community. This slide here shows our population from 1850, historic fact.
Nice.
Yeah, in 1850 we had 70 people. Every 10 years they do a census, so 2020 was the last census. That's when they kind of recalibrate it. So even though it seems like we have a lot of growth going on, our population really hasn't changed much. And we would attribute that to aging population, not only in Stoughton and the county, but the state and the national level as well. Plus, families are not having as many children, and we've seen that in our school district, which we'll get into some slides here shortly. On the right, we have our net new construction. That was put in place, and I think the law was changed in, 2010 or 11. And the net new construction is important for us for our budget. And the way it works is we have a zero-based budget, and we can grow that budget from year to year based on our net new construction. So it's our equalized value or the additional property value that's created through the growth. There's a formula that we use, and that determines how much we can raise property taxes by throughout the city. And you can see that in the last few years especially, we've had our 3 best years ever, and we anticipate that's going to continue to grow. This is a breakdown of building permits in Stoughton. So you can see, like Dane County back in the early 2000s, we had a lot of single-family homes going up, 44, 50, and then you get into 2009 and through 12, and we had like 1 or 7 or 1 again. So those were the lean years during the recession. And then you get back down to the current decade, you can see the last 2 years have been our highest 2 years in a row ever, and we anticipate that'll be higher this year. Plus, we've had quite a few two-family or duplexes, zero lot line duplexes, so most of them are owner-occupied. And then anytime we have some multifamily apartments go up, there's a big spike there. And I did put the percentages on the right-hand side, so you can kind of get a flavor for what percentage is single-family home versus duplexes versus multifamily. With the owner-occupied, I kind of almost consider those like single-family as well now, because there's been a lot of active seniors that have moved from their single-family home to a new zero-lot line duplex, ranch style. Some of them don't have steps. And for them, it was just a convenient way to get into something without multiple floors, something that was new, that's lower maintenance, maybe the yard's not as big. So that's been a really popular product here in Stoughton. And then this chart here shows our home values, and if you go back to 2006, you can see our average home prices have doubled here in Stoughton in less than the last 20 years. And really what that's done is really resulted in some cases, higher property taxes. Even though our mill rate has gone down, the property taxes have gone up because home values have skyrocketed, not only in Stoughton, but in Dane County. And if you were to look at the numbers in neighboring communities like Verona, Oregon, McFarland, you'll see that their home values or median price homes are probably anywhere from, could be 50 to 80,000 for the same size home in those communities, and their property taxes are generally higher too. So even though things seem really expensive here, and they are, the closer you get to the capital, they're even more expensive. So it's really contributed to, this housing crisis, especially on the entry-level homes. A little bit about the school district. The school district, what they do is they do different models to determine and project out their enrollment. And enrollment's really important to the school district because their funding is partially based on their 3-year student enrollment average in their September count. So this chart here shows that in 24-25, which is the current year, they had projected somewhere between 2,550 students to 2,600 students, and they're actually over 2,700 students. So those projections were done a couple years ago, and you can see that over the last several years, they've been trending down in enrollment. And if you go all the way back to the early 2000s, you know, the classroom were about 300 per class. Now they're closer to 200. But it's kind of leveled off here in the last few years, which is really encouraging for the school district. And like I said, the enrollment's about 2769, so about 100 to 200 students more than they had projected. So that's an indication that some of the single-family homes that we're building right now, young families are relocating to Stoughton, which is really a good thing for a school district. And you can kind of see how that affects their per pupil based on their enrollment. So I'll go through a couple developments here quickly. So Kettle Park West, that's out behind Walmart. And we have 2 nationwide builders going out there. The one, I'm going to say, in the peach color, kind of in the upper right-hand corner. Those are the Lennar homes. Those are single-family homes that, you know, are probably, I don't know, 1,800, give or take a few square feet. Price range could be, you know, over 400, some are over $500,000. And then the lightish green are some other ones that they're working on in their second phase. And then you also see in the where the straight row lots are, those are what we call the alley lots, in the green and in the peach. Those are the D.R. Horton, and those are called the alley lot homes where the driveways are back to back. So they just started them a few weeks ago, and they've got like 3 or 4 of them that already have a roof under them. And these are going to go up rather quickly. They claim they can have somebody in a home from start to finish in 60 days. And those are price point, haven't seen the numbers yet. The ones in Union Grove are going for anywhere between $325 and $350. I don't believe the ones in Union Groves have basements. Ours do. But we're hoping that the price will still be in that range, and that's about as, you know, entry-level pricing as you can get right now in a single-family home. They're also doing some twin homes out there, which is what this picture shows. I imagine the price on them will be a little bit less, and really the single-family home is just literally half of this twin home. It's the same model and everything. They're going to try to have variations in colors and as much as they can do to kind of make them look so they're not totally cookie cutter, but they're all basically going to be the same floor plan. We have some other apartments that are approved out behind where these alley lots are. We're still waiting for them to, you know, come to terms with some council action so they can get the parkland dedicated so they can move forward to build. This would be a total of 96 apartment units at market rate. So market rate would be the regular value versus a subsidized rate would be something less than that. Also out there, if you see, as you're going toward 138, you'll see kind of a fence line kind of going up there. That's where they're building this car wash here. And it's actually going to be a Mr. Splash. So it'll be a conveyor wash with lots of vacuums. They have one in Sun Prairie next to the Menards. And there's one down on Janesville on Milton Avenue that they converted over. So that's what's going there. The commercial development is also valuable for us for a net new construction, commercial and residential. It was really helpful. We don't get any net, we don't really gain much on like as much on you know, just regular farmland. It's got to be a building in order to create the net new construction for us. So that's what we hope to get and create some jobs along the way. As you go past the Walmart entrance on Jackson Street across from the hotel, Anytime Fitness has a plan approved to put in a 4-unit. They would be in one of the units, and then they would have 3 other tenants, which are yet to be named, including one that potentially would have a drive-through. So it's assumed that that might be some sort of a restaurant or maybe a financial institution. We'll see. 51 West, most of you are aware of that. That's out kind of by Eggleston's Woods on the east side. The 3 apartments in the Brown actually became 2. They're just finishing up on the second one. They anticipate that that'll be ready for lease in July-ish. All the other properties, which were duplexes, are completed, and the trail and the parkland is all developed. On the west side, the red phase in the commercial has not been marketed aggressively yet. It will be soon. That property would be kind of contingent upon the roundabout that'll go in on Rutland Dunn, kind of where the red line goes in the middle of the road there. Rutland Dunn, 51 in Greenspire. The traffic count indicated that that roundabout would have to be installed before that could be fully built out. So the developer is kind of waiting for that to happen, because the DOT will pay for that roundabout. If somebody were to build out that retail ahead of time, they would have to pay for it, and it's over $2 million. We're still working on the Brown area on the west side for the apartments. We have another meeting with JT Klein tomorrow. So they're looking at a new WIDA tax credit program. The new application period is underway, so we're having conversations with them yet. And then most of the duplexes and condos have been built or are being built. And then the yellow is a single-family home. I think they pulled 3 or 4 permits on those. So that one's coming along quite nicely. And one thing we've really noticed on this is that the price values are coming in much higher than we projected when we created the TIF district. So what we did is we took an inventory of all the lots, and then we went through and plugged in the numbers that we projected when we put the TIF together, and then we created another column on the spreadsheet that shows what they actually sold for, and they're coming in at way higher than projected. So that's good news for the health of that TIF district. And then this is what basically the apartments, these were taken a few months ago. The roof's on it, the siding's on it, windows are on it, things are moving forward, and then you can kind of see across to the other side. And then the roundabout's going to be there in the middle where the intersection is. And then this is the other angle of it where it shows it, and then you can see the early stages of the Stoughton Trailers headquarters that's going up there, which is ahead of schedule. It's nearly completed, so they'll be doing a celebration out there soon. And then we've been having meetings with STI. I would anticipate they'll be at the next council meeting to talk about their next phase and that developers agreement that'll go with it. And then this is kind of what it looks from an aerial. You can see with the Stoughton Trailers in the white would be their headquarters. The brown on the right would be 2 lots for multifamily. They've been having conversations with somebody about the first lot, so we're starting to get some preliminary plans that were under a review that will get to the Plan Commission. The single-family homes in the yellow on the bottom, those are extensions of current roads that they'll be able to put those homes on. And then there's some commercial along the highway, and then when you get to the north, there's some duplexes that will eventually go in there as well. So they're coming across really nicely in phase 1, so we're looking forward to moving into the next phase. And then on the right is kind of a basic layout of what the parkland could look like. There's enough space there basically for 4 large fields. We haven't completed the master plan yet, so that's something that the Park and Rec Committee will be selecting a firm to do the master plan, and then working on what we're trying to do now is really get things graded and get the grass in the ground, which I think they have rolled out, and then the prairie grasses so they can get established. It takes about 2 years for those to get established where you can actually, play on them or run around on them. So we really encourage them to get that grading and get that seeded while they sort out the other phases of the plan. So that's coming along. And then Magnolia Springs, this is south of town. South Page Street was extended, and they're in the process of phase 2. Phase 1 was kind of the northern half. That's almost completed, and then phase 2, they're in the process of putting in the stormwater pond and the remaining infrastructure to serve those phases. And then they'll begin marketing those lots, I would imagine, this year yet. Greenspire is kind of a subsidized housing project over on Jackson Street. There's multiple buildings. I think there's 92 units. And we did a total remodel there. It was a WSTO tax credit deal. We had some nonprofits that were formed that came in and they renovated all the units. They were built in the 1970s and 80s. And we just could never come up with enough excess revenue to remodel them ourselves. So the tax credit deal was the way to go. So we were able to get that done. And then we were also the first and could be the only project of this magnitude that secured $5.8 million from federal government to do solar panels and heat pumps in all these units here. So that was a pretty big deal for us and for the people that live there that are on fixed income. Will have virtually no electric bill, as before they were all heated by individual electric heaters in their rooms. So we're pleased that that project is wrapping up. They're getting ready to work on the landscape, and then they'll be done. Oops. Down on the riverfront, the RDA is working with Alexander, so they continue to move ahead. This is basic layout of what one of two lots might look like. A couple buildings, some parking. None of this has really been approved yet, but we're going through the process of evaluating that at the Plan Commission, and I know the RDA is working really hard to put together a financial deal, and eventually the city attorney will be drafting the developer's agreement. And then this is kind of what the current concept of the buildings could look like. Nothing has been finalized yet, but this kind of gives you kind of an idea of what they could look like down on the river. There'd be some underground parking and some balconies and some walkways and some green space. So we're excited to see that project move forward. It's been a long time coming. Highway improvements. So currently the DOT is working on the 51 corridor. So right now they're doing the Spring Road to 5th Street, which is the first of 3 phases for that section of the highway for this summer. And then sometime in June they'll be working on the second phase. And then eventually they'll basically get to 5th Street by the end of the summer. And then next year it'll be the western section from Harrison Street all the way out to Roby Road. I mentioned the one roundabout at Greenspire 51 and Rutland Dunn Line Road, and then there'd be another roundabout added on the corner of 51 and Highway B, which has long been anticipated. And then sometime between 2027 and 2029, they'll do the downtown area. So Public Works has been meeting with the Chamber and the Merchants Association to try to come up with some local detours and some promotions that they can run during that time period. Right now it's programmed for 2029, which means the money's there. If for some chance the money's available sooner, they're far enough in the engineering that they're confident that they could do the project in 2027 if the money is there to do so. Stoughton Health, as you probably heard, they recently put a big addition on their building that's completed and open now. I mentioned infrastructure before with the county. Having infrastructure and services available is really important for our community, and having our own hospital here is really a big deal. Not all communities enjoy that, especially in the rural areas. A lot of them are closing, so we're excited for the future of Stoughton Hospital. Another project that has been worked on in the last few years is Stonecrest. Basically, the stormwater management plan was approved by the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission. The developers so far haven't moved forward. This would be extension of roads that kind of dead end off a racetrack road, and you could see the triangle piece would probably be the natural progression of where they would start and then move their way up toward Highway 51 where the Stoughton Airport is. We have no timeline on that. They're currently not submitting any plans, but like I said, the stormwater management plan has been approved. Depot Hill, this is the Schmidt Foundation. We're scheduled to close on the property sometime before August. So we've been making arrangements for the chamber. There's an agenda item tonight, and also working with the Historical Society to help them move their artifacts out of that building as well. Schmetz has been to the Landmarks Commission and gotten a certificate of appropriateness, which means that their remodel for the exterior of the building has been approved for the design guidelines as outlined in our landmarks ordinances. So I'm not really sure what their timetable is, but Rick, also you did an agreement for them too, didn't you?
Yeah, I think we might have something at the next meeting about that, because they're excited to get moving forward on that and begin the renovations before they even own the property.
And the agreement basically is they can start renovating the building, and if for some reason the deal falls through, we get to keep the work that they did, but we don't anticipate there's going to be anything that fell through. There was some question about some title work that was submitted 35 years ago, and there wasn't a record at Register of Deeds, but it sounds like they've got that figured out now.
Yeah, we own more land than we thought, so.
That's always a good thing. And then we had a couple conversations with a farmer that owns a couple of lots just west of Nordic Ridge, and basically, you know, this is kind of a generic sketch of what that could look like if that's ever to be developed. And I think the point here is with this one and Stonecrest is we do have some projects in the pipeline. So not everything happens now, but we want to have things lined up for the future, and this is something that you might see at some point. They're looking for investors. That's all I had. I'm sure that felt like plenty. Any questions about anything? So it's in the packet. You can use that as a resource if you have any questions. And then usually what I do is when we do the coffee for the mayors, which is the second Friday of the month, I kind of give updates on some of this stuff. And then those meetings are being filmed now, so you can watch them on WSTO or you can find them on YouTube. So if you want to kind of keep up to date on what's going on, it's a quick and easy way to do it. And then the other thing we've been doing is we've been doing a council catch-up. So tomorrow morning I'll meet with the camera crew and we'll do like a 10 or 15 minute summary of what transpired at the meeting. So if people just want the quick version, they can watch the council catch-up. If they want all the gory details, they can watch the whole meeting. Okay, let me catch my breath and then we'll go on to the next item here. And that would be, were there any communications from council members? Anything come up while I was going through that? Okay. Let me get to the next item.
I did. I thought.
Okay.
I thought one of you guys would mention setting in my week. You know, what a surprise.
Yeah, so that's in the proclamations. April and May is really busy with proclamations. We have the volunteer week, so we had a gathering and honored those volunteers of the year. And then pretty much all of our departments get recognized through the proclamations. And then last night, President Schumacher and I attended the kickoff dinner for Setting Mai. And then festivities start Friday.
Mm-hmm.
So which one, are you doing the canoe race or the run this year? Oh, that's always fun. So yeah, there's plenty to do, and you can go on the Chamber's website if there's anything specific you're looking for. Anything you want to add?
Just as noted, Alder Tillotson pointed out to me that I did not wear anything Norwegian related for this meeting, and that's my bad. I'll make up for it either at Halloween or something else.
All right. Let's see, where am I going here? So under old business, the first item is going to be an ordinance for a second reading. This one came from the Plan Commission, so I'll have Alderperson Caravella introduce it.
This is ordinance 16 of 2025, amending section 30-5 parentheses B of the Stoughton Municipal Code relating to the flood storage map panel numbers as required by the DNR, and I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Schumacher. Alderperson Caravello.
And this, Rick went over this at the last meeting, but this is just an update of this flood insurance map based on a Dane County's flood insurance study that was completed, according to my notes, last month. So, routine kind of thing, I think.
Anything you want to add to that?
I think that's a good summary. I mean, basically, it's a requirement from the DNR, or I guess a request from the DNR to update the map. This is, I guess, related to FEMA and flood insurance, but so they're requesting that we update it based on the new study.
I think it still exists. I'm hoping we don't have a storm so we don't find out. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. Next item came from Finance earlier tonight. We've talked about this a few times. This would be the lease for Chamber of Commerce. That would be Alderperson, where are you? Butler. You moved.
Through the magic of AI, I moved.
You were here and now you're there.
So I don't have a formal title to read off, but this is the lease that we discussed at the last council meeting, I believe. And this is a lease to provide some space within City Hall for the Chamber of Commerce, since they will be moving out of their current location. The reason that it's time sensitive is because we want to be able to have some finality for them to know where they're going to be going. I'll let Rick fill in the blanks, but there's a couple of small amendments to what you see in the packet to clarify the rent when it would start, which would be after the initial 2-year term. The first 2 years would be no rent, and then it would be $200 a month. And then there's another section that discusses key access, and it indicates 2 in here, but it's amended to 3 because they have 3 members.
All right, anything you want to add, Attorney Matthew?
I think that about covers it. I mean, some of the biggest changes that we've made have dealt with basically granting the mayor flexibility to relocate the office space they use. So one event would be the election season. So basically finding them adequate office spaces somewhere in City Hall during election season so they're not in the middle of the voting process administration or election administration. So they were agreeable to all of that. As Alderperson Butler mentioned, the rent is $0 per month for the first 2 years. There's a mutual option, so if the parties both agree to extend, the rent would increase to $200 a month. The lease that's in the packet, we removed the first clause of that section, so basically there was just some confusion about when it would start. So it makes clear that the rent begins on the first day of the extension term, so not for the 2-year lease. The I guess other question that the chamber had was they are looking into the feasibility of internet and phone services. So I guess we would be asking for just some flexibility on that. As written, we're not providing them any phone or internet service. That's something they have to provide to them by themselves. But in their conversations with TDS, it may be kind of cumbersome to run additional lines out there for getting them on separate IT services. So that's one thing that I'm just asking for a little bit of flexibility on with potentially adjusting that in the future for based on the feasibility of actually getting them the services. So I think that summarizes the discussion at Finance tonight.
And I should have added that we did recommend to council unanimously.
Any questions or comments? Alderperson Wozniak Scanlon?
Do they then have to carry some type of renter's insurance to be tenants in the building independently?
They do have their own insurance requirements. So that's in the lease that they'll have to provide proof of insurance, which they have that right now for the depot building, so that's not an issue.
Any other questions or comments?
There's
Alderperson
a
Hirsch?
section in here that I can't seem to find right now because I have
Okay.
it on my small phone.
All right.
But when you talked about the keys, I think there was a sentence in there that said that tenant should give the landlord 2 keys, but I think it should be flipped. The landlord should give the tenant 2 keys. And so I just kind of made note of that, and I can't find that.
All right, we can find that and correct it as it needs to be. Basically, what we're working toward is going from keys to key fobs, because those can be programmed specifically for that building, and it creates efficiencies. We're looking at kind of the whole overall security of the building. So we're looking at putting in like an intercom system to buzz people in and out of there, similar to the school district. So if somebody's there to see the chamber, they would buzz the chamber button and they would greet them at the door. And if it was for city staff, then the appropriate staff member would greet them at the door and let them in. Did you have a comment?
Yeah,
Find
that's
it?
section 11, and
11.
and it did switch to landlord shall provide tenant with 2 keys.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I found what you were looking for, Alderperson Hirsch, and made that change.
Okay, thank you for that. Anything else? Now that I can see it.
With the key fob too, because I was just, curious about the security aspect of it and keys floating around and stuff like that, so.
Yeah, I would think the fobs will be more secure because it'll be assigned to a specific person. So whenever, we'll have a electronic record of who's coming and going. Plus, we do have camera systems, and we're looking at enhancing the cameras. So we can literally have an app on our computer that when somebody buzzes the front door, we can actually see that person on our computer screen, so we know who we're letting in and out of there. We anticipate during high traffic times that, we're not going to be buzzing people in there during the elections because it's a constant flow. Tax time's kind of the same way. But when it's, kind of random people coming and going, we want to make sure that people don't just walk in and start heading somewhere in a building and we don't know they're there. And that's been a challenge at times. It's much better in this building than it ever was when we were in the Opera House, but it still does happen. And then we're also looking at enhancing the meeting room downstairs, so we can use it for meetings ourselves. We might be able to have some Zoom meetings down there. The challenge with the basement, there's no elevator, so we're grandfathered in so we can use it, but if somebody has mobility issues, we have to make accommodations for them upstairs. But sometimes if we just have like a contractor meeting or something like that, we like to go downstairs and use that room, so we're going to put some technology down there as well.
That was the other question that I know that came up in the last meeting is, when the chamber came here, they talked about having businesses having meetings down there. Did that get clarified and
Yeah,
understood what that meant?
Yeah, so they thought it would be nice if they could offer meeting space for businesses as a benefit of being a chamber member. Our building policy, we really wouldn't allow that. It's limited to, right now it says government and non-government uses, but we're working on our building policy and we're changing it from government. For-profit would not be allowed. It's not allowed already. So it would be government and nonprofit. So as a nonprofit, the chamber could have a meeting there, but if a business wanted to have a meeting, they would have to go somewhere else because, if they're a for-profit, the assumption is they should be able to pay for meeting space. So, you bet. Any other questions or comments? So I guess we would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve?
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Reeves. One last time for discussion. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. Next item is also from the Finance Committee, and it's a resolution, Alderperson Butler.
This is R 63 of 2025 preliminary resolution declaring intent, I think this should say to, exercise special assessment powers for 2025 street projects, and I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderperson Reeves. Alderperson Butler.
And we discussed this in a previous meeting as well. This is for upcoming road improvements and schedule, or I'm sorry, attachment A lists where these are, and these will be special assessments to deal with things like replacement in driveway aprons, carriage walks, retaining wall improvements.
Exactly, and you might recall last year, all the other special assessments we eliminated, so sidewalks, curbs and gutters we eliminated last year. So that will be paid for through our capital improvement money that we borrow for. But it doesn't cover the items that Alderperson Butler just laid out, and that's what's in the resolution.
And I think I asked Brett this, not that, last meeting, the aprons, it's if they are non-conforming aprons or they aren't up to code. So
Yeah, so if it's, yeah, I mean, typically we change the grading on the roads, which changes the engineering on the aprons, but if it doesn't, then I think that's a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a good clarification. Any questions or comments on this one? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. Next one is a resolution for authorizing signatures. So this one here didn't really, I don't know if this went through the committee, but basically we're just trying to update. We have Lisa on board now, and then we also wanted to make sure that everything else was up to date. So anything? Okay.
This is Resolution 64, 2025, the resolution by the Common Council of the City of Stoughton amending the authorized signatures for the City of Stoughton. So moved.
Is there a second?
second.
All right. Any discussion? All right. You good with it? Okay. All right. Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. Okay, last item is a first reading from Public Works. Our chairperson is Alder Abel, so I'm going to ask Alderperson Hirsch, can you introduce this one? Because I know this one is near and dear to you anyway. Okay.
This is the ordinance of the Common Council to amend section 64 9-5 plantings in the terrace to allow for the placement of the raised planters in the terrace, and I so move.
It's a first reading.
Can I actually ask for a waiver of the second reading, since how it
Sure.
is planting season at this point?
Yep.
And if
Okay.
we wait longer, then people lose the opportunity to actually plant.
All right, so we have a motion to waive the rules, which needs a second.
Second.
There's a second by Sherlucky. I don't think we can discuss waiving the rules, and we need a 2/3 vote. So waiving the rules really just gives us an opportunity to vote on it tonight instead of normally we would have had 2 readings on it, would have been voted on at the next meeting. Okay, so right now the motion is just to waive the rules. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries, so now the rules are waived. So then we go ahead and make the motion, right? Is that right? Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Yep.
I'm trying to get it up to, To amend section 64-9-5, plantings in the terrace to allow for the placement of raised planters in the terrace. And I so move, and this is ordinance 17 of 2025. And I so
Okay.
move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Sherlucky. Anything you want to highlight, Alderperson Hirsch?
Sure. I mean, it was brought to my attention, a couple of constituents that, due to the nature of their yards, they have no viable sunny places to grow vegetables or have a garden. And so they were hoping to amend this ordinance to put planters in that terrace part where it actually is sunny for a lot of residents. And so this ordinance didn't allow any raised bed gardens in there, but they did allow, vegetable plants and everything to be planted there. But a lot of times those terraces have really, really poor soil. So it's almost impossible for them to actually grow anything. And so they requested to have at least a 24-inch raised bed garden so they can put good soil in there and actually grow food for their families. And we discuss this at Public Works, and there's different criteria with setbacks from the sidewalk and setbacks from the curb. Obviously, you don't want any raised bed gardens be right up against the curb, because then people who park there can't open up their door. They'll be hitting, the raised bed. So we try to figure out the best way to protect the trees in the terrace, make sure that nobody's growing anything right around the fire hydrants or any of the other municipal kind of permanent structures. And so that's what you see here. And there's also any intersection, there's like that vision triangle that the plants can't exceed 30 inches, whereas in the regular terraces, they can go up to 48 inches. So which would accommodate tomato plants and whatnot, so.
All right, thank you for that. Any questions or comments? Alderperson Schumacher. President Schumacher.
Maybe one where it's not aligning quite right, and it's set back around the fire hydrants. In one section, it calls for no plantings within 6 feet, and then further down, it has the raised bed placement at 36 inches. So that means if you put it 36 inches from the hydrant, then you can't put an approved planting in the first 36 inches of your raised bed to comply with the 6-foot rule.
So where's the 6-foot rule?
6-foot rule is in C3.
All right. I have it on the screen too, if that helps you.
Yeah. Good call. That one.
We can amend it. What do you think
Yeah.
it should be?
I think because if it's 6 feet, you're basically, you're leaving in a regular terrace, possibly only like a 2-foot by 2-foot raised bed, which isn't gonna grow anything. So I would set back to what was amended on this, which was the 36 inches.
36. So it's 3 feet.
And if Brett has a problem with that, then we'll.
Yeah.
amend it.
Probably be more of the fire chief than Brett, but I think it'll be okay as long as they can see the fire hydrant. That's the main thing.
And they're not permanent structures, so if they really need it,
They can move it.
they can move it and step on it.
Okay.
People know that.
So I would be looking for a motion to amend that.
So moved.
Okay. So we're amending, what'd you say it was,
C3.
C3 to 3 feet?
Yep.
Okay. Catch that, Candy?
I have it, thank you.
Okay. And so,
Second the amendment.
okay, so there's a motion by Hirsch, a second by Schumacher. Any other questions or comments? And that's just on the amendment. Hearing none, all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. So that takes us back to the original motion as amended. Any questions or comments on that? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. Okay, and before we adjourn, I'll let you know that HATS, the Housing Advocacy Team of Stoughton, is going to be here at the next meeting to present. I think you made a request a while back. I think it was you. Somebody did. So they're going to be here to give us an update on their program. And then I think we'll have possibly some stuff from maybe STI, maybe who else?
I think STI is the most likely.
Okay. And then we'll see what else comes out of the committees. And then welcome Mike and Lisa. So you made it through your first meetings.
Yeah.
So you two have something in common, right?
And you said that we do have a quorum, so we are meeting on the 27th?
Yeah, we are planning on meeting on our next regular meeting. Those that replied said they were available unless for some reason half the people in the room here can't make the next meeting. If something comes up, we just ask you that you notify the clerk and myself. That would be helpful if you're ever going to be absent from a meeting. And then, Mike, if you want to get together at some point, you know, we can go for a ride or we can go through some materials, or if you're good, you're good. Your committee assignments were in there as well. Did you see those? Okay, so we'll get you a reminder. So you're on 2 committees. So we'll get you those dates so you can get them on your calendar. All right. Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Jensen. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Tillison. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed. We are adjourned. Have a good night.